It started as a simple weekend trip, just me and my buddy Jordan, hitting the road after months of saying we should hang out soon and never doing it. We'd both needed a break. Work had been crushing me, and Jordan, well, he was coming off a rough breakup and had that quiet, tired look in his eyes the last time we grabbed beers. "Let's go somewhere," he texted one night. "Just us. No service, no stress." He had a family cabin up north, 2 hours into the woods, half a mile off the main road, nothing but trees and stillness. It sounded perfect. We left Friday after work in Jordan's beat-up Jeep. He always called it a tank with character. The thing groaned every time it hit 60, and the radio only played classic rock, whether you wanted it or not. But it was part of the charm, I guess. The first hour of the drive was smooth. We had the windows down, the wind cutting through the warm autumn air, and the kind of conversation you only have with someone who's known you too long to fake anything. But somewhere past mile marker 143, the engine made a noise I can only describe as a dying animal coughing up bolts. Then everything died. Power, steering, the whole deal. Jordan coasted us onto the gravel shoulder, right where the trees thickened and the road got quiet. We both stared ahead for a minute. "Try it again?" I said. He did. The engine clicked, coughed, and gave up. "Cool," I muttered. Jordan exhaled slowly and leaned back. "Well, this is a vibe." We got out, popped the hood, and stared at it like two guys who knew absolutely nothing about engines. He jiggled a wire. I squinted like that might help. We were miles from the nearest town. No cell signal. It was late October, and the sun was already low, casting long orange shadows across the trees. "All right," he said after a beat. "So we're stuck." "Looks like it." He looked around, then rubbed the back of his neck. "The cabin's about 3 miles from here. We could try hiking it before it gets dark." I glanced at the sky, then at the trees. "You sure we won't get lost?" He shot me a lopsided grin. "What? You don't trust me?" "Honestly?" I did. Too much, probably. We grabbed what we could carry: 2 backpacks, a flashlight, and the blanket from his back seat, and started walking. The road quickly turned into a trail, then into barely a path. The forest swallowed sound. No cars, no birds, just the crunch of our boots and the occasional swear word when I tripped on a root. About halfway there, it started to get cold. Not just chilly, cold enough that I could see my breath. And I'd only brought a hoodie. Jordan had a jacket, but even he looked uncomfortable. "You good?" he asked, glancing over. "Yeah, just didn't think we'd be out here freezing our asses off." "Almost there," he said, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. We reached the cabin just as the last light faded. It was smaller than I expected, tucked between tall pines, the windows dark, and the porch covered in leaves. Jordan fumbled with the key and got the door open. The inside smelled like cedar and dust, no power. He hadn't been up here in months. He lit a couple candles from a box on the shelf, casting everything in a dim, flickering glow. "No heat," he muttered, kneeling by the fireplace. "Let me try to get a fire going." I dropped my bag and wrapped the blanket around myself like a sad burrito. My hands were numb. Jordan struggled with the fire for a few minutes. Lots of swearing, some banging of logs, and finally got a flame going. It wasn't much, but it started to spread warmth through the room. "There," he said, standing up and rubbing his hands together. "Primitive heat." "God bless cavemen," I said. He laughed and flopped onto the floor beside me. We sat in silence for a while, both staring at the flames. My shoulders started to unknot. The heat felt good, and so did the quiet. Then Jordan looked over at me. "You still cold?" I shrugged. "Kinda." He hesitated. Just for a second. Then he said it. "Let's keep warm." "Smear." I blinked. "What?" He gestured to the blanket. "We can both fit under this, right? Body heat and all that." My heart thudded once, sharp and loud. It wasn't that weird. We were friends. close friends. We'd crashed on couches, shared tents, huddled through rainstorms on camping trips. But this felt different. Still, I didn't want to make it weird. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Okay." He opened the blanket, and I scooted closer. Our shoulders touched. Then, our thighs. He wrapped the blanket around both of us, and I could feel the warmth instantly. And then, I felt something else. The silence stretched. I glanced at him, and he was already looking at me. Neither of us said anything. The fire crackled, but all I could hear was the sound of my own pulse. Loud. Distracting. Like it was echoing in my ears. Jordan didn't move. Neither did I. His thigh was warm against mine. Through denim and fleece, I could feel the heat of his body, steady and quiet and far too comforting. His arm brushed mine as he adjusted the blanket around our shoulders, trying to keep the cold out. I shifted slightly to give him room, but he didn't pull away. If anything, he moved closer. It was subtle, the kind of movement you might not notice if you weren't already hyper-aware of every breath and brush of skin, but I noticed. I noticed everything. "You good?" he asked, his voice low. I nodded. "Yeah, just tired." He made a soft noise in his throat, not quite agreement. This trip didn't exactly go how I planned. "No shit," I said, half laughing. "You always romanticize these mountain escapes, but then your car dies, and we're freezing in a candlelit shack." He smiled at that, and I felt him relax beside me. Still beat scrolling through Instagram alone on a Friday night. Fair. We sat there a while longer. The fire grew, throwing warm orange light across the wooden walls. It felt weirdly peaceful, like we were suspended outside of normal life, just the two of us, tucked away from everything. Then Jordan did something I didn't expect. He leaned his head against my shoulder. Not hard, not dramatic, just soft and slow, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And I didn't move. "Hope this isn't weird," he said, almost too quietly to hear. I swallowed. "It's not." He didn't reply, but he didn't move away either. His head was heavier than I expected, and the weight of it made my chest tighten. Not in a bad way, just in that way when you feel too much all at once and you don't know where to put it. I wanted to say something, ask him why, what this meant, but the words stuck. I didn't want to scare him off, didn't want to break the moment. Then he whispered, "You ever think about us?" I turned my head slightly. "Us?" Jordan lifted his head, just enough to look at me. His face was barely a few inches from mine. "You know," he said, "like, if things were different." My breath caught. I didn't know what he meant exactly, but I also did. Because yeah, I'd thought about it, more than once. In quiet, stupid moments when I caught him laughing too hard, or saw him come out of the shower with wet hair and no shirt. I'd buried those thoughts so deep I forgot where I put them, but here they were, crawling back up like they'd just been waiting. "Why?" I asked carefully. He didn't answer right away, just looked down at our legs where the blanket pooled. "I don't know," he said. "I guess lately I've been wondering what it'd be like with someone who actually gets me." I didn't breathe. He looked back up at me. "Is that insane?" "No," I said, my voice hoarse. "Not insane." His eyes searched mine, like he was trying to read between the lines of my face. Then, so gently I almost didn't feel it, he rested his hand on my knee. It sat there, warm and solid, like a question. I didn't pull away. "Okay," he said after a moment, so softly I felt the word more than I heard it. And then he leaned in. It wasn't a kiss, not yet, just closeness. But his breath was on my cheek, and his lips hovered near mine, and the space between us vanished molecule by molecule. I should have said something. I should have asked what this meant, or if he was sure, or if we'd still be okay in the morning. But I didn't. Instead, I closed the distance and kissed him. It was slow, uncertain, the kind of kiss you only give when you've spent years not kissing someone and wondering if it would ever happen. His lips were soft, tentative, like he was scared he'd mess it up. or maybe that I'd pull away. But I didn't. And when he kissed me back, really kissed me, it felt like the world got quiet. When we pulled apart, neither of us spoke. The fire crackled. The air was still cold. But suddenly, I didn't feel like I was freezing anymore. Jordan looked at me with something unreadable in his eyes. Then he gave me the smallest, most vulnerable smile I'd ever seen from him. "I've wanted to do that for a while," he said. "Me too." But I couldn't say it. Not yet. We didn't talk about the kiss right away. Not because it didn't matter. It did. But because everything that came after was so quiet, so fragile, I think we were both afraid to speak and ruin it. Jordan leaned back slowly, eyes still on mine, then shifted against me beneath the blanket. I could feel the heat of his body now like a slow burn, and he didn't move away. If anything, he leaned into me a little more, like gravity had tilted just enough to make it easier. The fire crackled softly. Shadows danced along the walls. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing against the cabin like it was reminding us we were still miles from anywhere. Just the two of us in this little pocket of nowhere, with too much tension between us and no distractions to run to. Jordan cleared his throat eventually, like he had something caught in it that wasn't words yet. "So," he started, then stopped. I waited. He gave a faint laugh under his breath. "I didn't plan that." "I didn't think you did," I said. My voice was low, careful. I didn't plan this whole trip thinking, "Hey, let me get stranded and maybe kiss my best friend, you know?" "Could have fooled me," I said, teasing but gently. He glanced at me, surprised, then smiled. That same crooked grin I'd seen 100 times, only this one felt different. Softer, a little nervous. "I guess I've been thinking about it for a while," he admitted. "Just never thought I'd actually say something, do something. Why now?" Jordan shrugged, looking into the fire. "I don't know. Maybe because there's no service out here, no people, no pretending." I nodded slowly. "I got that more than I wanted to admit," he went on. "You ever feel like being around someone so long kind of blurs the line between what's friendship and what's not?" My stomach did that twist again. "All the time," I said. He looked over again, really looked this time, and I saw something in his eyes, a kind of relief, like he'd just exhaled a breath he'd been holding for months. We didn't kiss again right then. There was no rush, just the feeling of his shoulder pressed against mine, his knee knocking into mine beneath the blanket. And somehow, that was enough. Later, after the fire died down to glowing embers, we dragged the blanket over to the mattress in the back room. It was old, sunken in the middle, and smelled faintly of dust and cedar. Jordan tossed a second blanket over us, but it wasn't doing much. "Still freezing," he muttered, rubbing his arms. "You were the one who thought this would be a cozy escape." He gave me a side look. "You complaining?" "Nope," I said. "Just saying if I die of hypothermia, I'm blaming you." He smirked. "We'll just have to get closer then. Body heat, remember?" I should have rolled my eyes. But instead I shifted toward him without thinking. He did the same. And that's how we ended up chest to chest under two thin blankets, breathing the same cold air, our foreheads almost touching. "Still weird?" he whispered. I shook my head. "No. Just..." Nodded. "Same." There was a long pause, not tense, just full of things unsaid. Then Jordan reached up and ran a hand lightly along my jaw, fingers rough from years of working with his hands. His touch was careful, almost shy, but steady. Like he needed to know I was really there. "I don't know what this means yet," he said, "but I don't want to pretend I didn't feel anything." "You don't have to," I said. "Not with me." His hand rested against my chest after that, just over my heart. We lay like that for a long time, warm breath mingling in the cold room, the line between friends and something more blurring with every minute. I wasn't sure what tomorrow would look like, but right then, I didn't care. I woke up to the soft sound of breathing. At first, I didn't remember where I was. The ceiling above me wasn't mine. The light coming through the window was pale and cold. It smelled like firewood and pine, and there was something heavy against my chest. Then it clicked. Jordan. His arm was still around me, one leg tossed loosely over mine, and his head. Yeah, it was buried in the crook of my neck. We were still pressed together, barely any space between us, sharing warmth the way we had the night before. Except now it was morning, and real life was waiting just outside that window. For a second, I didn't move, didn't want to. His breath tickled against my collarbone, and part of me wondered if he was actually asleep or just pretending, the same way I was pretending I didn't feel the low flutter of nerves starting up in my chest. Because now came the hard part. Now we had to decide if that kiss, the closeness, meant anything outside of candlelight and a busted Jeep in the woods. Jordan stirred, slowly blinking his eyes open. His gaze landed on me, sleepy and soft. "Mornin'," he murmured, voice rough. "Hey," I said. He blinked again, and I watched him slowly register the way we were tangled together. He didn't move away. If anything, his fingers curled a little tighter around my shirt. We stayed like that a moment longer, breathing the same stale morning air, before he exhaled. I was hoping I didn't dream any of that. You didn't. He smiled, but it was cautious. Okay. Good. We lay there in silence for another beat before I cleared my throat and said, "So, what now?" Jordan shifted onto his back, arms folded behind his head. "I've been asking myself that for, 6 hours. I turned my head toward him. "Any answers?" "Some," he said. "Mostly just that I don't regret it." "You sure?" He looked at me, serious now. "Yeah, I'm sure." I let that settle in, let it breathe. He went on. "Last night, I wasn't just being impulsive. It wasn't because of the cold or the weird vibe or anything. I've been thinking about this for a long time. I just didn't know how to say it." That landed like a weight in my chest. Familiar. Because I'd done the exact same thing. "I thought you were straight," I said quietly. Jordan let out a dry laugh. "I did too, for most of my life. I don't know if I'm anything, really. I just know, when I think about you lately, it's not the same as it used to be." I didn't say anything at first. Then I asked, "When did it start?" He looked up at the ceiling, thinking, "Maybe around last winter. We were at that holiday party. You were wearing that stupid ugly sweater with the beer pong cups glued to it. You told me I looked like a drunk elf. You did. But also, I don't know. You were laughing, and I remember watching you and thinking, why does this feel different now?" I stared at him. "That was almost a year ago." "I'm aware." "And you said nothing." Jordan gave me a crooked smile. "You weren't exactly shouting your feelings from the rooftops either." Touché. The moment turned quiet again. But this time it was more settled. Something had shifted in the air. Not dramatic, not intense, just honest. And that honesty was something I hadn't realized I'd missed until now. Eventually we got up and moved stiffly around the cold cabin, still no power, no service, no way to call for help. We threw on extra clothes from our bags and layered every blanket we could find until we looked like half-frozen laundry piles. Jordan made coffee on the stovetop using one of those old-school percolators and a gas burner. It tasted like burnt earth and regret, but it was hot and it woke me up. He handed me a mug and stood beside me near the frosted window. "We should probably figure out a plan," he said. I took a sip and nodded. Try to hike back to the road, maybe flag someone down. "Probably." He glanced at me then. "But also, we don't have to rush back." I looked at him. "No?" He shrugged. "No one's waiting. No work today. No phones. I don't mind the quiet." His fingers brushed mine as he said it. Not by accident. And I knew then, this wasn't a fluke. It wasn't just one night. This was the beginning of something. Something real. We didn't leave right away. There was this unspoken agreement to stretch out the silence a little longer. Not because we were avoiding reality, but because we both knew that the second we stepped out of that cabin and started the hike back toward the world, something would change. The bubble would pop. I guess that's the thing about moments like that. They don't last, but you don't forget them either. By noon, we'd packed up our things and layered ourselves in every semi-warm item we could find. Jordan wrapped the emergency blanket around his shoulders like a cape, and I stuffed my socks with hand warmers from the glove box stash he'd brought, just in case. We locked up the cabin and started down the trail, the way we'd come, now in reverse. It felt different. Not just because the sun was higher, or because I could see where I was going this time, but because the air between us had shifted. Easier, softer. There was a stretch of trail where the trees opened up, and the mountain range rolled out in every direction like something from a painting. Jordan stopped and looked out, then turned to me. "Still cold?" he asked. "Less than yesterday," I said. He nodded. "You ever think about how many times we've been close, and I just never saw it?" "What, the mountains?" "No, us." I looked over. "Yeah," I said. "But maybe we weren't ready until now." He let that sit for a second, then nodded again. "Maybe." We kept walking. About halfway to the road, my foot hit a slick patch, and I nearly wiped out. Would have landed face first in a pile of dead leaves if Jordan hadn't grabbed my arm and yanked me upright. I landed against his chest instead. "Jesus," I muttered, catching my breath. "That would have been a terrible way to die." "Yeah, I'd have to explain to your mom that I let you fall off a trail after a romantic cabin night," he said with a grin. "Romantic, huh?" Jordan didn't let go of me right away. "Wasn't it?" I looked up at him. Slightly out of breath, slightly off balance, but warm all over. "Yeah," I said. "It was." His hand slid down to mine. And we kept walking like that, not the whole way, just for a little while, just enough to feel like whatever this was, it wasn't staying behind in the woods. Eventually, we hit the road again. The Jeep was still there, still very much dead. But a couple of hours later, after we flagged down a ranger passing by in a truck, help showed up. A tow truck. A jump start. And finally, cell service. My phone buzzed with notifications. Work emails, family texts, a couple of group chats. But none of it felt urgent. Not compared to the glance Jordan gave me as he slid behind the wheel again. We didn't say much on the drive back, not because it was awkward, but because some silences are good. They hold things together. At a gas station halfway home, he tossed me a bottle of water and said, "So, what happens next?" I opened it, took a sip, and asked, "You mean between us?" "Yeah." I leaned against the side of the Jeep and watched the gas pump click. "We figure it out," I said. Jordan looked over at me, that familiar grin playing at the edge of his mouth, but now with something new behind it. Something real. "I'd like that." "Me too." We got in the car. He started the engine, and we drove south, back into the noise and the cell service and the lives we'd briefly left behind. Only now, something was different. We weren't just best friends who got stranded in the woods. We were something more. Whatever it was ours now. The next few days were weird in the way only something quietly monumental can be. We got back late Sunday night. Jordan dropped me off first, lingering in the driveway like he didn't want to say goodbye. I stood by the open door of the Jeep, one hand resting on the frame, the other jammed in my pocket because I didn't know what else to do with it. "So," he said, eyes flicking to mine, then away. "You home all week?" "Yeah," he nodded. "Cool." There was a beat of silence. Then another. "Jordan," I said, leaning in a little. "We're not going to pretend that didn't happen, right?" "No," he said, quickly. "God, no," I raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" "I'm just still wrapping my head around it. It's not that I didn't want it." I do. I just don't know how to go from best friends who've never talked about this to whatever we are now." I smiled. Yeah, that makes two of us. He exhaled, a smile flickering on his face. Can I see you tomorrow? Yeah, I said. Come by. And he did. And then again the next day. By Wednesday, it felt almost normal. Not the way things used to be. Better, in a strange way. Like the rhythm we already had was still there, just with these new beats added. Like brushing shoulders in the kitchen while I made coffee and him not moving away. Like him falling asleep on my couch and pulling me into the blanket without thinking. We didn't tell anyone. Not because we were hiding it, but because it was still new. Still ours. Then Friday night rolled around, and everything tilted again. It started with a party. Mutual friends. Nothing big. Just drinks at someone's place, bad music, and too many people in one apartment. I wasn't sure if we should go, but Jordan had said, let's just act normal. So we did. Except now, normal meant our eyes finding each other across the room. It meant his hand brushing my lower back when he passed behind me. It meant that low thrum of awareness, humming under my skin the entire night. We didn't stick close. He talked to his coworkers. I got pulled into a conversation about hiking spots with a guy the first barely knew. But it was like, even when we weren't near each other, we were still connected. Still tuned in. Then it happened. Some girl, tall, brunette, obviously into him, slid up next to Jordan and placed a hand on his chest as she laughed at something he said. I didn't hear the joke, but I saw his smile. It was polite. A little guarded. Still, something twisted in my gut. Jealousy. Stupid, irrational jealousy. I turned away before I could think too hard, and that's when I felt a hand brush my elbow. Hey, Jordan said, quiet in my ear. You good? I nodded too quickly. He stepped closer, not touching but close enough that I could feel the warmth of his body, even in the packed room. She asked for my number, he said. I said no. I looked at him. You didn't have to. I wanted to, he said. There was something in his eyes then, something sure. We should get out of here, I said. His smile was all the answer I needed. Back at my place, the silence between us wasn't heavy, just full. His hand brushed mine when I opened the door. I didn't pull away. Neither did he. We didn't talk much that night. We didn't have to. We kissed again. Not rushed or clumsy like that first one by the fire. This one was slow, deliberate. Familiar, even though we were still figuring it all out. Later, lying on the couch in the dark, his head on my chest and my fingers tangled in his hair, he whispered, I like this. Yeah? He nodded, eyes closed. I don't know what we're doing, he said, but I know I want more of this. Me too. It wasn't love yet, but it was something. That was the thought I had the next morning, waking up with Jordan still half wrapped around me on the couch. The blanket twisted at our feet, his hair a complete mess. The TV was still on, playing some muted late-night movie neither of us had watched. I moved slowly, careful not to disturb him, but he stirred anyway, blinking up at me. You always watch me sleep? He mumbled, voice low and hoarse. Just admiring your bedhead, I said, grinning. He rubbed his eyes. You know, this was not how I thought the week would go. No? I thought maybe we'd get drunk in a cabin, make some terrible chili, and complain about life. You did all that? I said. He gave a sleepy chuckle. Yeah, but also this. He sat up and stretched, shirt riding up just enough to make my brain short-circuit for a second. I looked away and got up to make coffee, pretending to be a functioning adult. From the kitchen, I heard him say, So, what do we call this? I paused at the counter, hand hovering over the coffee tin. I don't know, I said. Do we need to name it? I guess not. Just, I don't know, feels real now. I turned and leaned against the counter. It is real, he nodded, quietly. Then, do you think we should tell people? That question sat between us. It wasn't about shame. Not for me. I wasn't closeted. And Jordan, well, I knew he was still figuring things out. I didn't want to rush him. Didn't want to turn something soft into something that had to be explained or defended. We don't have to rush it, I said. We can keep this ours for now." He looked relieved. "Thanks." He crossed the room then, took the mug from my hand before I even poured it, and said, "Let's go out today. Just be together, somewhere normal." We ended up spending the day like any other couple might. Brunch, bookstore, walking through the park, laughing at dumb things, brushing shoulders, and pretending it didn't send electric sparks through our arms every time. No one looked at us twice. No one cared. But every moment felt charged. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was finally out in the open. At least between us. That night, we didn't even pretend he was going home. We crawled into bed together, not drunk, not freezing, not stranded, just two people who wanted to share space. He kissed me slowly, like he finally had time to. There was no rush, no pressure, but the way his hands moved over me, careful at first, then more certain, told me this was the start of something he wasn't afraid of anymore. And when it finally happened, when clothes came off and closeness turned into something deeper, it wasn't explosive, it wasn't movie scene passionate, it was quiet. It was grounding. It was Jordan whispering my name into my neck and holding on like he needed the contact to breathe. It was me tracing my fingers down his spine, trying to memorize every piece of this version of him that only I got to see. And when we lay there afterward, tangled and half covered by a blanket, he said something I hadn't expected. "I'm scared," he whispered. I shifted to look at him. Of what? Messing this up, losing what we had before. I swallowed hard. "Me too." Then I added, "But I'd rather risk this than go back to pretending." He stared at me for a second, then nodded, slowly. "Yeah, me too." The thing about falling for your best friend is that it doesn't feel like falling at all. It's more like realizing you've been standing at the edge for years, toes dangling off the cliff, and one day you just step forward, and instead of dropping, you discover there was ground there the whole time. You just hadn't looked down. A week passed. Then, 2. Jordan started leaving his toothbrush at my place. Then, a change of clothes. Then, it wasn't really his place or my place anymore, just wherever we were together. We still didn't tell a lot of people. But not because we were hiding. We were just protecting something delicate, something new. Then, one night, we were out at this bar with a couple of our mutual friends. Same crowd we'd been around for years. Someone asked Jordan where he'd been lately. Joking, casual, a beer in hand. And Jordan didn't even flinch. He just glanced at me, smirked, and said, "Spending a lot of time with this guy." A few eyebrows went up, some surprised looks. But nobody said anything cruel or weird. A couple of them smiled. One guy clapped Jordan on the back like it was about time. Afterward, when we stepped outside for air, I asked him, "You good?" "Yeah," he said, slipping his hand into mine. "I think I'm done pretending." He looked up at the night sky, breathed in slow. I've never felt more like myself than I have these past few weeks. I knew what he meant. Because it wasn't just the physical part, the kisses, the long mornings in bed. It was the way things between us just clicked. The way he'd sit next to me and steal fries off my plate, or play with the hair at the back of my neck while we watched TV. The way he'd tell me about his day like I was the first person he wanted to share it with. One night, a few weeks later, we were back at the cabin. This time, the Jeep made it the whole way. No breakdown, no drama. Just the two of us, a bag of groceries and firewood we actually brought ahead of time. He was laying out sleeping bags on the floor again, for old time's sake, when he looked up at me and said, "You know, if the car hadn't died that night, you'd still be ignoring your feelings?" He laughed. "Yeah, probably." We sat in front of the fire that night, wrapped in the same blanket we'd used when we were freezing. Only this time, the warmth wasn't borrowed. It was ours, built from something that started quietly and grew loud in the spaces we made for it. I leaned into him and said, "So are we calling this love yet? Or?" Jordan turned, gave me that half smirk I'd seen 1,000 times, the one that meant he was thinking something just a little sarcastic and a little sweet. "I think we passed that checkpoint a while ago." I kissed him. And this time, I didn't feel like we were suspended in some temporary world, hidden away from reality. This time, It felt like the beginning of something lasting, something real.